Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 9.16 patch notes. So, as always, you can find timestamps in the description if you don't have time to watch the whole video. And if you want to watch the video a bit faster, remember you can always just click on the little cog and just speed it up to 1.25 or 1.5 in the YouTube sort of viewer options down there if you want to go through it a little bit faster. Although I'll try to go through as fast as I can. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content on the channel. Check out the rest of the content as well. I am going to be releasing tier lists for support, AD carry, and probably one or two other positions over the next couple of days. So stay tuned for that and come out and check out the stream too. We'd love to have you. Sunday through Thursday, it's going to be on YouTube starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then Friday and Saturday, it's on Twitch, same time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we usually go till about 2 a.m. So wonderful community. I try to be as interactive as possible with the chat, so come by, check it out. We'd love to have you. Okay, let's go ahead and get back in here. So they're rolling out Pantheon. I don't think Pantheon is going to matter that much on this patch. I could be wrong about that. There's a lot of text here. I just feel like he's not going to be stronger than he currently is. I think he might even be worse. And one of the main reasons for that is he has a much longer cooldown on his ult. I mean, it does do a significant amount of damage later. It scales on AP, which I think has always been the case. But yeah, like his current, or like his, before this rework, it was 150 seconds, so you could do it at 2.5 minutes, and now it's 3 minutes, which is a really big deal, because that's how people usually carry with him when they're boosting, is they'll just ult other lanes and get a lot of free kills, or like jungle Pantheon can ult lanes. So I think that's going to be a lot weaker. They're adding, now I haven't actually watched a video on this, but what it looks like is this is a skill shot now on his Q. I believe hurls his spear to all enemies hit. So I assume that he just throws it in a line, kind of like what I assume would be like Pike. So that's going to take a lot of consistency out of his kit, because now people can dodge it in top lane, whereas before, you know, he just walks up and chucks spears, and in certain matchups, it's really, really hard to deal with that. So I think that's a lot weaker. Now, I can see what the damage was. So it was dealing 140% bonus, and it went 75 to 155 in early ranks. Yeah, 75 to 155. The same thing, 100% bonus. This was 140% bonus. That's definitely looks like it's weaker to me. And then sudden death. So if they're really injured, then it could crit, and it scaled with Infinity Edge. I think it still has the ability to crit. Oh, and if it's upgraded. Okay, so I guess if you have it empowered, it does extra damage plus an extra 100%. So I guess if you're playing around the empowerment, which is every time you land a basic attack, so when you're hitting a minion wave, I guess maybe while you're waiting on the cooldown, if you do this every time it's empowered, then it gets to do quite a bit of bonus damage. Right, 72, but then an additional 100% AD, so that's 200% of your bonus AD. It's a 10 cooldown. I didn't think about the empowerment. This is a 4 cooldown, though. So that's a 10-second cooldown. This is 45 mana. This is 40 mana. So I guess in theory, this is stronger, because that'd be 280% total damage, and you can just spam it over and over again. You might run out of mana doing that. Versus this is more mana efficient. If you use it with Mortal Will, you can do more damage. If it's not Mortal Will, then it's not doing more damage. And they can hide behind minions because it's a straight shot. And so that, like, before it was guaranteed to hit the person. There was nothing that was going to block that damage. Now it can be reduced by 50% if they hide behind minions, which is a pretty big deal. Now, yes, you can just thrust and stab, but it does less damage if you just thrust. It does refund 50% of the cooldown, and it does, I believe, full damage to everyone hit. So that would bring it down to like a 5-second cooldown early. I feel like it's a nerf. It does slow them for 2.5 seconds if you have Mortal Will. But just the fact that they can dodge it, number one, and number two, the fact that it's going to do 50% damage if it goes through minions, and number three, the fact that it's a 10-second cooldown instead of a 4-second cooldown, I think is going to lower his trading a lot in the laning phase. Okay, so 1 second, deals damage, and then with Mortal Will, he can get a free, like, basically what his E used to be, the little stab thing for 135% damage. It does trigger on hits, so in theory it would trigger things like Blade the Ruined King, but you're not going to build on hit with him, I don't think. I mean, maybe there's going to be a new build with it, but it's basically the same thing as his old E, is what it looks like to me. Heartseeker Strike, I believe, did way more damage, though. This is 300% of your bonus AD. He has way more damage. And then, like, I'm pretty sure he maxed Q first and this second. So, like, just a couple of points in this early would be 150%. Now, that's total damage, though. So it's 150 total damage and 300% AD versus this is 80 plus 3 basic attacks. Okay, so it scales based on his attacks. They deal 45%. So if you have 100 AD, that do 125 damage. 135% of your total attack damage with no base damage. Versus this does 150 base damage plus 300% of your bonus AD. I'm almost positive this is more. And at all times, your spear shot in this can critically strike enemies below 15%. Increase against it. Okay, so this does like a little bit of extra damage. Oh, this only does 75. That's the increased amount. Maxed it. So that's only if they're below 25%. Oh, it's way less damage than the spear. The base damage is 75 to whatever. 75 to 235. Okay, so I guess it's the same, but it gets reduced. Okay, this can't crit. I feel like he's worse. I feel like he's worse. You know, just like reading over this stuff kind of carefully. I mean, this is interesting for trading. He does do like some extra slam damage. It can prevent, you know, he doesn't take any damage for a little bit. It's on a really long cooldown. This is similar. I mean, maybe this is better. People asked about support Pantheon. I don't think so, though. I mean, he still scales too much off of AD and has pretty low base damage, very limited CC. Now, from what I understand about this only blocks damage that is applied to him. So it's not a Braum shield. It does not block all projectiles. It does not remove the projectiles either. I don't think. He just is invulnerable. He is invulnerable to turrets. So, like, if an Ezreal R comes flying through, yes, you're not going to take damage, but it's still going to fly through you and potentially hit your AD carry. So it's not Braum shield. He does some damage here at the end. I mean, I'll have to see it in action, but my initial thoughts are, at best case scenario, neutral, and in worst case scenario, worse. And I think it's worse. I think he's worse. Although it's totally possible that maybe in some situations it's better, like with this. This is the thing that's kind of tough to tell, like just how useful this will be. If you time, like really good Pantheon play, if you time it at the right time, you know, to go invulnerable when like Garen's about to ult you or like Darius is going to ult you or something, I believe it stops true damage. It's like a Taric ult or something. So, yeah. I mean, so if you time it at the right time, this could be, like, really, really good in certain matchups. So they are making him more skill-expressive. You have to choose how you want to use this passive. You have to actually hit your spears. Ideally, like, get around the minions instead of just spamming Qs on them. So maybe, like, if you're actually a really good Pantheon player and you get better, maybe this is a better case scenario. But I think for kind of your average Joe or Jill, you know, Pantheon player, I think this is going to be a lot worse. Okay, Sadie. What? Oh, she's knocking over stuff. She says, feed me, or I knock all the things over. Okay, So let's move on. So yeah, my verdict is probably worse most of the time. I would expect him to lose 3%. I don't know what his total win rate is right now. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes down to 47. Maybe even lower, maybe 45 or less. I think it's going to be really hard for a lot of people to play him. He's not super popular to begin with, but I think they're going to have to buff him over the next couple of patches. Okay. Azir, okay, so they are late game, his Q, which I believe is what you max first. I've never played Azir, but I think you max the Q. You might max the soldiers. It's possible you max the soldiers, but I'm pretty sure it's Q max. Because I think the soldiers deal damage based on level. Well, I can just look. I guess soldiers deal damage based on level, mostly, not ranks in them. I think you put ranks in them and it gives you attack speed or something. They've reworked Azir several times. Okay, it does give you a lot of extra bonus attack speed based on level. Okay, it's based on level. Yeah, you don't do that one. I think it's the last thing you max. So it's like, do you want a lot of extra attack speed, 120% attack speed, because it gets doubled apparently. He summons a third concurrent soldier. People might, I mean, I guess I could just look here. What do people max? I think it's Q. If it's Q, this is probably going to be a pretty decent nerf to his mid game. Yeah, it's Q. Okay, so Q and then W. So basically, that's going to make it a lot tougher for you to run people down. I mean, basically what it says, and to reposition your stuff late game. I mean, it's pretty significant. Like, two extra seconds doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 40% extra delay, basically. I mean, it's mostly for pro play. His win rate's already, like, pretty abysmal. It's like 46% or something for solo queue. Yeah, so I expect maybe he'll lose 1% or so. I'm not sure why he's being played in pro. I guess against tanks, maybe. I haven't really followed the pro meta too in depth over the last month or so. I had a bunch of other stuff I've been working on. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously a nerf. It'll take him down 1% or 2. You don't want to see it if you're Azir. Will it push him out of pro meta? He's super popular right now, so I don't know if it's going to be like enough. He's kind of slow though. He takes a little while to scale. I mean, he's pretty good against tanks. I mean, maybe like the prevalence of Sejuani is making it more popular. He's a very good team fighter. We'll see. It's tough to predict, but it's definitely a nerf. I think he'll go down maybe 1% in solo queue to 45%, and maybe his pro presence goes down a little bit, but it's tough to say. Because they're also nerfing other stuff that's popular in pro, like they're nerfing Corki, they're nerfing Sejuani, they're nerfing Ezreal. You know, they're nerfing a lot of the really popular things right now for pro. Tahm, Kench, and Yuumi. So if those were part of the reason why it was popular, then, you know, maybe he'll still stay up there. So I don't. It's a pretty big nerf. It's a pretty big nerf though. So I'd expect his presence to go down a little bit in pro. Okay, Corki losing 5 AD. This matters more than it might seem just because he does rush Trinity Force, which is based on your base attack damage, how much damage that you do off a Trinity. We look at games of League here. Come on, man. Just last week. Corki is pretty popular. I think part of what makes Corki popular is that Sylas is also so popular and strong, and you can't really do anything by stealing Corki's ult. I don't think it really does that much. So that could be a big part of it. They probably have good matchups into Kiana. Both Corki and Azir have good matchups into Kiana and Akali. Corki can fire all of his stuff into Akali's smoke, so he can throw his Q and his missiles and his Gatling gun. So he probably has good matchups there. He's fairly safe early on. Kiana can't really itemize any sort of magic resist, so he's probably pretty good against her. So I think he just has good matchups in general mid lane. So I think he'll still probably be pretty solid He doesn't really have any like AD ratios that are worth mentioning in his kit, so I don't think that like that's gonna matter too much. It's just like it's gonna hurt his Trinity because Trinity's gonna do 15 less damage off of this because it doubles your base attack damage. So I think he'll probably still be good. Okay, Dr. Mundo, 30 tenacity at all ranks. I'm pretty sure he maxes W anyway, so I'm not sure how much that matters. I think you can't. I mean, you could max Cleaver for poke also, but the W is his wave clear, so if he maxes W first, it doesn't matter as much. Masochism, it's 4 seconds instead of 6. I just don't think it's going to matter. I think there's just so much healing reduction in the game. Erlonomicon, Executioners, they just buffed up like Kled and some other people to give them extra like anti-healing. He just has no CC. He has very limited safety. I just think, and Conquer is still a rune. I just think that tanks are just terrible in top lane right now for the most part. There might be a couple that sneak in there, but like, why would you play a pure tank when you can play something like, Irelia or Jax or just like these other champions that get really tanky and difficult to kill, but also put out a ton of damage. He's just a really old champ, and they just don't want to make actual pure tanks that are like impossible to kill. They just don't want that to be a thing in the game right now. So I don't think it's going to matter. I think he's still going to be weak. Okay, Ekko. Bonus damage off of phase drive early. I think you max that second, so it probably doesn't matter. It's not going to... I mean, it's a little bit of extra damage matters. Late game, the 20 seconds off Chrono Break is pretty relevant. That'll allow you to just run around in the Clown Fiesta and make some more plays. I feel like Ekko's not, like, that bad right now. I mean, he's probably, like, 48% or something, and he's 50%. So it's like, he's fine. I don't know. I mean, I guess he's fun to watch. Maybe if they want to try to get people to play him in Pro. He's kind of fun to play. Or, like, there are moments where you can play, like, outplay people with him. So I think he's an interesting like design champion. When he's too strong, like he's really OP. But there's a lot of champs that are like that right now. So I guess showing him a little love just because he can make some flashy like fun plays can be pretty good. So I'm okay with that, I guess. I might regret saying that eventually, but there's so many champions, like I said, that just kind of scale out of control, and at least he's kind of difficult to play. It's not just kind of roll your hand across the keyboard and kill everybody like Master Yi at Platinum and lower. Okay. Ezreal getting a nerf. Probably deserved. The thing is, there's been this phenomenon in the last, like, year or so, I would say, especially since, like, the reworks last year of Akali and Aatrox, Irelia, the year of, like, the Ultra reworks, where champions with really low win rates are ultra dominant. And that's, it's just kind of weird because, like, they want to make it to where some of the most powerful things in the game, like, you have to actually, like, master it. You have to learn how to play it. And they don't want it to be a high win rate because by its very nature, it should be difficult, to achieve those heights. And so it creates a great disparity between pro play and solo queue, or like, even people that are, like, smurfing in solo queue and everybody else. Because you'll just feel like something like Irelia or Akali is just, like, unstoppable. It's like, man, this champion is really busted. Then you go look at the win rates, it's like 46%. You go try to play it, and you go 0-10. And so I think that's kind of feels bad for sort of your average Joe and Jane. But I think that in the long run, that's probably pretty good. It's an interesting balance approach. It's basically saying this champion is going to be overpowered if you're really good on it. But you can't access that unless you're just, like, a very, very good player, or, like, mechanically, or you just put a ton of games on the champion. So I guess that's better than something like Garen running amok. I mean, Garen is already, like, pretty good at a lot of lower elos. But, you'd rather see something like Akali be overpowered than Garen be really overpowered, right? Because at least there's some counterplayer, like Sona being really overpowered. So it's an interesting way to balance. They've been trying to dial that back some lately to, like, make some of these champions a bit easier to play, like they did with the Akali nerfs, to sort of bump her up a little bit in solo queue, but take her down in pro. They did a pretty good job of that with Rakan. Rakan is still popular and picked a lot. in pro, but you know, he used to have like a 46% win rate in solo, and he actually, you know, he was floating around like a 51%, but he's had about a 50% because they gave him better base stats. So they've kind of done that with some champions, trying to normalize some of the levels of play. But anyways, I'm mentioning this because Ezreal is one of those violators where he is just like, he just feels terrible in solo queue, like when he's on your team and you're the support, most like 9 times out of 10. But he feels like really OP when he's on the enemy team, which can be very frustrating. It's like really good Ezreal play is virtually unstoppable. I mean, there's, you know, pretty much no counterplay to it. He was picked, you know, he's only the 3rd most picked AD carry right now, at least as of last week in all regions. This is probably fair. So they're knocking down his AP ratio, which takes a lot out of his burst because his R, you know, has a huge AP ratio. His W has a pretty good AP ratio. So they're lowering on Mystic Shot. So you're still going to have burst potential, but you're not going to do as much sustained damage if you want to go for something like a Gunblade as your 3rd item, or if you want to, or like your 3rd big item, or like Ludens as your 3rd big item. You're not going to do as much sustained damage because your Q's not going to hit him as hard. So, but you still have the burst. So I think that's fair. I think it's kind of toxic for him to do like super heavy burst and super heavy sustain for how safe he is. So now this might make kind of the Bladeru and King build a little bit better. You could even see maybe like a Mortal Reminder if there are tanks. I don't know what you get after Blade if you're not getting AP. But maybe people still go the AP. I don't know. We'll see. Where? Sorry, I'm like having a senior moment there. Is everybody just getting like Ludens and stuff on him? There's a pretty good chunk of like Blader and King still out there. So I think he's still going to have builds that are available that are pretty good. I just don't know what you get after Blade. I mean, I guess, yeah, just Quicksilver, just some defensive stuff, GA, Quicksilver, something like that. I mean, I guess no one's really getting Death's Dance. Yeah, Executioners and Immortal Reminder. So yeah, I mean, there's stuff he can build and be effective. Most people aren't even getting the AP. There's like a couple of like Luden's Echoes in here. But it's mostly his build Blade, and then the game's just over by then. You know, by the time you get your Mirror Mana, your Iceborne Gauntlet, your Tier 2 boots, and your Blader and King, game's probably over with how fast games are these days, so... And you still can, like I said, you can get a GA, Quicksilver Sash, or whatever. So I think that's fine. Most top-end Ezreals aren't even building AP right now, so that's fine. Arcane Shift, this one's a bit more meaningful because you max this second, so, you know, around level 9, you're only going to have 2 points in this, so, you know, it's 5 more seconds cooldown. Now, keep in mind, every time he hits a Q, it lowers the cooldown by 1.5 seconds. So it looks like, you know, this is 5 more seconds, but realistically, it's probably closer to 2 or 3 more seconds, so... I think that's fair. His E is up way too often. You know, it feels like it's up, you know, when he gets 40% CDR and he's getting 1.5 seconds off every time, you know, at 13 seconds, his baseline is going to be 8-second cooldown, and then he hits like, you know, 3 Qs, and all of a sudden it's like a 4-second cooldown. So for how safe he is, his long range, this is still going to be on a fairly low cooldown as long as he's hitting his Qs. I think it's fair, and it's going to make him a lot more vulnerable in the early game. If you can actually force him to Arcane Shift, you know, during the laning phase, you're going to have a much better time trying to get a hold of him again, maybe force him to blow his flash. So I think it's probably a good change. I know it looks weird, like I said, because he's at 46% win rate, but I think overall it's healthy for the game, especially in Pro, because there's very little counterplay to really good Ezreals. So I think he'll still be, like, picked in Pro and probably still pretty good, and he'll still be pretty terrible in solo queue unless you're really good on him. I like to play him personally. I think he's a lot of fun, but he just requires, you know, you have to hit a lot of skill shots, and you have to be pretty good at positioning and not E forward and things like that. Okay, so Fiora. Now, I don't feel like Fiora is in a terrible spot. I feel like she's one of those champions where it's just like her niche is breaking tanks, and there just aren't a lot of tanks because Conquer exists in the game. But she's, like, okay. She's got some game against squishies, too. I don't know what her win rate is, but I've definitely seen some good Fioras recently. Okay, it's like 49%. I mean, she's really dangerous to buff because I've put her in a lot of my best one-trick videos. Like, her is one of the best ones for the last, like, 2 of the last 3 one-tricks. Just because she's got a lot of counterplay. You know, she can counterplay a lot of what the enemy's doing, I should say, with her riposte. There is counterplay to her. I think part of her is healthy. You know, if she has to hit all of her vitals to kill you with her ult, I think that's healthy. If she has, like, light trades, like, she should beat tanks and kind of have a hard time against other fighters, right? So she should have kind of a hard time against things like Irelia, Riven, Jax. It should be, like, slightly against her in those matchups. So we'll see. I mean, these are pretty big buffs. Like, I think it's just, let me it's been a while since I've played her, but I think it's just what her next 2 attacks get this speed, or does she get, like, all of her attacks get this speed for like 5 seconds? I can't remember. First basic attack can never critically crit, but slows the target by 30 per second, while the second basic attack is guaranteed to crit. Next 2 basic attacks in 4 seconds gain the... Okay, so it's just her attacks. So it's not like all of her attacks, it's just these 2. Now, that is going to make it faster. I don't know what additive reduction means. It does reset her auto attack timer too, so you can go in with your Q, basically you auto attack, and then you blade work, and you hit them, like, really fast for 3 hits. I mean, maybe this will open up, like, a press the attack build, or something like that. Maybe it'll make that a little bit better. Because right now, I think she gets, like, Grasp a lot of the time. I guess you could get Conquer, but I think people take Grasp on her. Just for better trading. Conquer. What are pros doing? It's a lot of Grasp. Yeah, so you could do Conquer. I mean, this could make something like PTA better, because you'd be able to trigger it really quickly. The problem is, I think you max this second, and so it's not going to matter early game as much. You're going to have, like, a slightly lower cooldown where you can trade a bit more with it. I think they just, like, put random stuff here and just throw out random buffs sometimes. But, okay, it's nice. I mean, she maybe goes up 1 or 2%. I don't think it's going to completely change, like, her matchups, but it's cool. It's good. Okay, Jax. Jax is kind of dangerous to buff because they just had to nerf him, I think, fairly recently, right? And he's, you know, on my radar as, like, a one-trick champ that could potentially be overpowered. I guess he, you know, he's 50%. Just like the problem is I think you max Q first. You might max it second and get your W first. I can't remember exactly, but you get Shojin with this as well. Spear of Shojin. And if you max this second, this is actually a bigger deal. If you max it first, it's not gonna. It'll matter a little bit early game. But like the cool, because it doesn't give you extra cooldown at the final ranks. It's only at the earlier ranks. So I think this will help out against things like Nico and Kennen, kind of what it's saying, top lane, if you're getting kited. That could be pretty good. So, I don't know. Maybe he gets a percent out of this. It's probably not going to be a huge deal. Although, if he maxes W first, which it looks like that's what a lot of people do. If you max W first, this is pretty relevant, because that means you're going to get a 2-second cooldown for quite a long time until you get to level 10. So that could be pretty significant. Now, I think he still goes Trinity before Shojin, but it's good. It's nice. Maybe a percent or 2 there. Okay, Kassadin, I really don't like for them to buff this champion because he's so oppressive when he's good, but he does have a hard time into AD assassins, and there's a lot of AD assassins, or just AD champions in the middle in general these days are very viable and popular, so I guess he could use a little buff, but I just don't like this champion. He's so toxic when he's good. So, okay, whatever. I mean, they're giving him 30 damage. This is like the thing that you max second, though. You might even max it last. If you max it last, it's 30 extra damage. I think you probably max it last, actually. You max your Q and then your E. So basically 30 damage to his all-in. It's not super OP. It's probably fine. Okay, Sigil of Malice. A little bit of extra ratio. You max this first, although that doesn't affect the ratio that much. So what, you know, you're going to have, it's going to be an extra 10 to 20 damage for her all-in. And if you double cast Sigil, which usually people double cast the W, I think, so they can get closer. It's probably fine. I mean, kind of like Kassadin, I don't like to see buffs on this champion because she can feel really oppressive when she's good, but okay, fine. Now, this Lux change is pretty curious because I still feel like Lux is good. Although I know her win rate has dropped a lot. But I feel just anecdotally, like, in lane, that she's still pretty good. I guess she's at 48%. She's still pretty popular. I mean, so it did knock her down like 6% as support the last few changes. But this is a massive buff, man. I mean, the reason she fell so much is you took the shield out. Now, you're giving her 80 shield if you double tap somebody. Why does she need 80 extra shield? It's AoE shield. Like, come on, man. This was the reason that she was OP before. The cooldown didn't matter as much on her ult. It's like, okay. It was this. They increased her Q cooldown, I guess, by like 2 seconds or something. Whatever. That doesn't matter as much. It's this right here, though. Isn't this what it was, basically? It used to double the original shield. This is way, way too much. I think she's going to be OP again. I think she's going to go to like 53% again. I mean, that's ridiculous. A 300 AoE shield? In 2019? Janna's shield's like 210 and is one target. Okay. Well, maybe we'll start seeing Lux everywhere again, I guess. I personally don't want to see that because I like playing Rakan. And she's pretty good against Rakan, but she's going to go up a lot. I would say at least 4%, 52.5% after this as support. I mean, maybe she even goes back to 54. We'll see. I mean, it's like, why 40? Why not just 20 to start with on the base? And that would still give you 40 on this. Like, 260 AoE shield would still be really good. But, yeah, they're going all out. Okay. Giving some of that damage mitigation back. It's like you're giving all of it back, bro. Wasn't that literally what it was? It doubles the original shield. So maybe the way that stacked multiplicatively with plus healing and shielding, maybe that's what was really OP about it. No longer doubles shield strength. Shield ratio is increased to 0.3. I mean, the shield duration was reduced, but okay, so they didn't reduce the actual... Hold on. They didn't reduce the actual shield amount, right? So basically, okay, but it doubled this. So it gave you a 330 shield. So, like, if you had 20% plus healing and shielding, and, like, a 0.2 ratio, so if you had, like, 100 AP or whatever, you do... That'd be 130 on the base shield plus, 20% or whatever. Let's just call it 30 or something just for easy numbers. So that would take it up to like 150 and then double on the return. It'd be 150 base and it'd go to 300. So then that would be 450 total shield because it could stack with each other. So 450 total shield. So now what they're doing is... It still strikes twice here, though. Oh, no. Okay, so it's 150 that can trigger twice, though, right? So now if you have those same numbers, you'd go to 170. You have a 0.3 now, though, so you do 0.3. So wait, you do 0.3, it has to be 180, and then an extra, like, 1/5 of that is, what, 30, 35? 35 would take us to 175, whatever, that's close enough. So that would take you up to, just say 215. And then you would double that on the way back. Right? So that, I mean, it's basically, it sounds to me like it's pretty dang close to what it used to be. Because remember, you have this 0.3 ratio, which should trigger twice. So that's really 0.6 if you hit them twice with it, instead of 0.4. So it's like, yeah, the number is slightly lower. Like the base is 300 instead of 330, but you're also scaling harder with AP, because now it's going to be an effectively a 0.6 ratio instead of a 0.4. So if you have anything over 100 AP, which is really easy to do with Athene's plus Ardent Sensor, if you have anything over that, then I think it's actually better than it used to be. Now, the shield duration being down is definitely a thing, but keep in mind it also refreshes the duration whenever it comes back through. So what did they really nerf about her then? Okay. Her Q costs a little bit more mana. You keep this at rank 1, so it's 3 seconds longer on the Q. Okay, fair enough. This doesn't refund the cooldown. Okay. If you kill somebody with it, a lot of times you're not killing people as support Lux with it. You're just trying to, like, throw it into a fight and get some people low. It has a better ratio, though, and the cooldown is down a little bit at higher ranks. So, like, this is kind of a wash for support Lux. This mostly hurts mid lane Lux, I think. Because even, like, using this to wave clear is... Because you do that as support a decent amount. It's pretty good. And you're going to have... I believe you're going to do... Presence of Mind. I can't remember if you do Presence of Mind with her or not. I'd have to go back and look. It probably depends on if you're doing Comet or Aftershock. But, yeah, I mean, I think she's going to be really OP again. I think she, I mean, like I said, I would say 52, 53%, maybe higher. Because I think this actually is going to be better than it was the W if she has more than 200 AP or 100 AP. Certainly if she gets to 200, which is not that hard. Once again, you just do like Athene's plus Ardent Sensor plus Frostfang, boom, you're pretty much there. So, yeah, I think she's going to be very, very strong on this patch for sure. I think she's already still pretty good, even with the low percent win rate. Like, she's so frustrating to play against. Okay, anyways, we got Nocturne. Probably not going to matter. I mean, dude pretty much has to get to level 6 before he can gank. He's very short range, even on those ganks. There's just so much counterplay to him right now. I don't think it's going to matter. So I don't know. Maybe he goes up a 0.5% or something off this. Okay, Riven getting a nerf to where it's 12 seconds at all ranks. Probably matters. I mean, like, at level 9, this is a 20% increase to her cooldown, and she really, really wants the W, or the, to use this Q as much as possible. So maybe she goes down a percent or two. Good Rivens will probably still be able to play around it, but this will definitely hurt kind of your average Rivens. Sejuani, so is she really, like, that much of a menace? For real? They're going to nerf Sejuani and not Jarvan? I mean, I guess they were both played. Jarvan was played more. I think Jarvan's more of a menace than Sejuani, but they're both pretty good, but I guess she's banned more than Jarvan is. I don't know. It feels like Jarvan's going to run wild if you nerf Sejuani. Anyways, okay, so they're just like, hold on. We got a tank? People are playing tanks in 2019? Whoa! Hold up. You got to nerf the crap out of that. Okay, so they're nerfing, like, the only tank that's in the meta. I mean, literally, right? Like, who else would you consider a mainline tank other than, like, the supports, I guess? The Braum and Tahm and, like, Nautilus. Like, the supports have a couple of tanks, but, like, outside of supports, like, maybe Gragas. I don't know how he's itemizing. Maybe. Olaf, I wouldn't call him a tank. Maybe Skarner, like, top lane. That's a no, unless you're calling, like, Renekton a tank, which I wouldn't consider Renekton a tank. Mid lane. So it's basically like Braum, Nautilus, and Tahm. That's what you got. Maybe Alistar. I don't know. It's just kind of sad that just like tanks aren't really viable anywhere unless they're a support that has, you know, really good CC or like really good utility because they have high base stats, and supports just don't get any gold in pro play. And that's basically why people play tanks as for supports in pro. Anyways, okay, so what are they doing? 10 armor, 35 bonus armor, 10 magic resist, 35 bonus magic resist. Okay, so at 100, so at 100 bonus armor and magic resist, it's the same. But it's very rare that you get both armor and magic resist plus 100. I mean, it takes several items. So I think it's probably worse. So it's like you kind of have to choose now. If this is actually a buff, if you need all of one type of resistance. So if the enemy team has all AD, basically, and you're stacking all armor, this is actually a buff. So at 200 armor, you'd get an extra 10, which isn't going to matter that much at that point. Probably not. But the early game is where it's going to matter the most. So you're going to be a lot more abusable early game. This is bonus, not base. So Arctic Assault, 20-second cooldown. Okay, so you're probably only using that once a fight anyways, but if you miss it, like, you're definitely only getting it once per gank now. So you better hit it. Okay, fine. She's alright. I think she'll still be, like, okay, but once again, I think Jarvan's going to go haywire, and maybe Gragas starts coming in. There's already counterplay to her. Like, Trundle is... That's why everybody's playing Trundle, is to try to deal with Sejuani. He just slams Sejuani so hard, typically. Anyways, alright, fine. Probably not going to matter too much for Solo Cube. Might push her out of pro. We'll see. Okay, Shen. 5% of the target's maximum health. Keep in mind that's per hit. So that actually does add up. That's 3% maximum health. I think Shen's actually, like, not that terrible right now, honestly. Because I feel like there are builds where he can split. Especially, like, there is a Trinity Shen build that was going around for a little while. I don't know if people were still doing it or not. That I felt was actually, like, had some decent matchups. I don't remember what happened to that build. Maybe they nerfed him or something about him. I mean, he's got a 50% win rate. Like, Grasp is pretty good. In theory, like, you could take Presence of Mind and Legend Tenacity. And then take, like, Unflinching. I mean, maybe support Shen again? Probably not. I know there'd be some people that would really like that on the channel. I haven't seen a lot of people exploring that option, though. I mean, okay, yeah, Lehens is exploring that option. Lehens is exploring every option. But, yeah, I mean, I really think... I've been trying this out a lot on, like, Rakan and Pyke. Like, this combination of these things, if you go Unflinching plus Legend Tenacity, just gives you so much tenacity. Yes, it stacks multiplicatively, not additively, but still, it just feels like if anyone hits you with a piece of CC, especially if you have Mercury Treads, you just basically are invulnerable to CC. Like, it's going to reduce it by like 50%, even stacking multiplicatively. Because you're going to get 20 off of this reduction. This is like 30. Yeah, this is 30. 20, and then Mercury Treads, I believe, gives you another 30. So that's 80 tenacity. So, like, basically, if you're going to stun somebody for 1 second, you would take off 30% for Mercury Treads. I'd take it down to 0.7. Then you take off 20% for this. So that would take it down 15 to 0.55. And then you would take off an additional 30% for this. So that would be, what? 1/10 would be 11. That'd take off 33. So take it down to a 0.22. Something like that. I mean, I may have done the math wrong there, but I think that's how it works. Is basically like it's going to be like somewhere between a 0.2 and a 0.3 off of a 1 second stun. So yeah, you just basically never get stunned. So it could be pretty decent. It looks like he's actually being played the most as support. Now, I don't really know where you would pick him instead of something like a more traditional tank. But I mean, with Tahm Kench getting nerfed, maybe this is the macro support, right? Maybe if you are going for a split push comp in pro, you can go Shen because you can't do Tahm anymore, and then he can help watch out for your side laner. I mean, I could see it. Maybe I'll try it out. I mean, I do like, he's very safe too. That's the thing. It's like, you know, if someone tries to gank your lane, you can always shadow dash away, or you can like try to go ward and shadow dash away. So it's possible. I'm gonna stay tuned for my support tier list video. I don't have time to go into it all right here, but I'll definitely look into it. I mean, this is a lot more damage. It really is, because you don't need any items for this as a support. And so, and I think didn't they buff him also like a couple of patches ago? Let me look at him here just real quick. I know I said I wouldn't go super in depth. I'm going to have to think about it. Just sort of compare him to some other champs out there. But this type of champion, someone who can like has a high impact ult that can make really good like plays and like great macro pressure, is the type of thing that uses like presence of mind and the tenacity stuff. I think that's really, really good right now. Like you're seeing it with Pyke, you're seeing it with Rakan. I've had phenomenal win rates with Rakan. You know, this patch, like even in the last week, I think I've gained like 4 divisions or something just spamming Rakan with those runes. So I think that's something that is still pretty underexplored. Does this include the bonuses? 2, 3, 4% of the target. Okay, so that does not, it's not this. Wait, empowered Q. Okay, that's only his empowered Q. 4, 5, 6. Okay, so you have to get it empowered to get it. But 5 to 7% of the targets, maximum health, plus X amount on hit. So if you're like level 4, that's 48 damage on hit. Plus that'd be 21% of their max health if you hit them with all 3. It's pretty good. And the cooldown's not that much. I'd have to think of like the items that would go with this. He does have an AP ratio. Probably not. Probably not AP with him. Although maybe like Font of Life with Ardent Sensors. That just feels really trolled. I think he would still go. Like you can't do Ziggs with him, but maybe you could do, and like mana items are not like things like Frozen Heart are not going to be great on him. I mean, what made him viable before is you could go Banner of Command with him. So I mean, you can go like Knight's Vow. What? I guess Redemption, just because Redemption's just good in general. I guess you could go Knight's Vow and then maybe Locket or something in some matchups, and just complete your warding item. Some people are going Gargoyle Stoneplate. I don't know. We'll see. It's interesting. And then Shadow Dash, base physical damage is a little bit higher. I'm not sure. I think you max this second. So it's probably not going to matter too much. But this is actually pretty interesting. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, maybe he's possible. Like, maybe into other engaged tanks, like if you're against something like a Nautilus or a Pyke or a Thresh or something like that, Leona, maybe he's going to become one of the... Because, like, the percentage damage obviously does very well against tanks, and then that taunt does a pretty good job of peeling. Maybe against heavy auto attackers, his W blocks a lot of damage. The problem with him as support is, like, it requires coordination for your team. If you ult somebody, they have to, like, not run away. And, you know, they have to actually stand in your little spin thing, your Spirit Refuge or whatever, to get the auto attacks blocked. So, requires a little bit more coordination than your average support, but... Like I said, he has a free flow dash, which makes him very, very safe in general. And the fact that you can like influence macro, especially split pushers on the other side of the map, is a pretty big deal, especially for pro. So I think we might actually see him more in pro. Does he have any presence whatsoever right now in pro? No, nobody's watching him. But especially with like Yuumi getting nerfed out with her poke and like Tahm Kench getting nerfed, like we'll see. Spoiler alert, that's what's happening. Okay, we got 10 minutes. We got to keep going. But I know that most people on my channel watch for support, so I just wanted to talk about Lux and Shen. But stay tuned for the support tier list. I'll probably release it either later today or maybe tomorrow. And I will have more numbers for you and like a better sense of what I think's gonna happen. Okay, Singed. Couple of baseline things. Insanity Potion, giving some better stats at later levels. Probably still not gonna be good. Okay, Sion. This is interesting for Sion jungle. I did see a Sion jungle in my game yesterday. It was pretty good for a while, but then it got outscaled. But part of that was just no one on his team drafted, like, sustained damage. We may have... I don't remember if we lost that game or not. It was a pretty good game. But I was actually impressed. It was pretty hard to kill this guy in the jungle. He does have a lot of CC. He obviously takes objectives really slowly because he doesn't... I don't think he has a lot of percentage damage. His W does some. But... he is tanky. I think he'll have a pretty good wave clear if Decimating Smash now basically does 20% extra damage against monsters. And they're increasing the base damage on it. I think you max this first if you're jungling him. So I don't know the matchups with him, but if you do want to tank jungler, especially with Sejuani getting nerfed, I think Jarvan's probably still going to be better, but maybe there's a world where Sion could work. I mean, he does have engage with his ult. Probably not, but maybe. We'll see. It's interesting. For jungle Sion, it's interesting. He definitely have pretty good clear against things like Raptors, Wolves, Krugs. I think he could be pretty good. Okay, Sivir, this is a pretty big nerf. Because remember, this is total attack damage. So this includes her base damage. So it's not just bonus damage, it includes her base. So this is going to hurt her wave clear like a lot. Especially early on. A ton. As you max this second. So by like level 9, you're only going to have 2 points in this. So, yeah, I mean, that's going to be, what, 15% off right there. Yeah, I mean, I think she'll still be pretty good. Is she really being played all the time in Pro? I mean, she's the 5th most picked champ. With kind of a lowish win rate. Good God, Caitlyn's like 1 in 10. Anyways, so pretty big nerf to her. I think she's okay. Like, I don't know if they needed to nerf her that hard because they already nerfed her a lot back then. She is very frustrating to play against, though, for a lot of champs. So, you know, a lot of people probably rejoice at her being nerfed. I mean, I guess she's a little on the strong side, but I don't know. Okay, pretty big nerf. Pretty big nerf. So I expect her to fall maybe like 1 or 2% off of that. Okay, Sylas now gets reduced damage against minions and monsters. This is going to hurt his jungling a lot. So it's 45. So basically his clear speed is like pulled down by 45% or something. So I think this is probably going to push him out of the jungle. I mean, I don't know his exact clear speed, but toning his clear speed down just a bit. Just a pinch. Just 45%. Just a little dash of nerf to his clear speed, right? Because I mean that's his clear, right? Is his chain lash. What else? He doesn't Kingslayer. He's not going to use Abscond probably, so it's his Q, right? And now it does 45% reduced damage. So I think this is going to hurt his wave clear a lot. Was he already too strong in the jungle? I don't think so. I mean, he's good in games, you know, that I see him in sometimes, but like I wasn't like, oh my God, that Sylas, like, holy crap, that thing's strong in the jungle. I mean, he's got 48% solo Q in Pro. Looks like he's maybe a little bit better than 50-50 in Pro. I mean, I guess he had the highest win rate outside of like Olaf of like the top 5 picks. I mean, that's massive. Really going from full damage to 45%. I mean, maybe they just don't want to put a lot of extra text on the ability, but could you not just say, like, 20% less damage to monsters, 45% less damage to minions, and 20% less damage to monsters or something? I don't know. 45 feels extreme. So, yeah, I think he's out of the jungle. So if you see him, it's going to be mid or top, probably. Okay, Syndra, 25% damage against champs. Whatever. I mean, extra 15 is pretty significant there. She's okay. I mean, maybe she'll show up as an answer to like a nerfed Azir or a nerfed Corki potentially, but probably won't matter too much for solo queue. Maybe a pro. Tahm Kench, this is a huge nerf to Kench. His shield is lasting much shorter amount of time, and hitting his move speed is a big deal. Because, like, obviously, when you eat people, like, you want to be able to run faster. Did he get nerfed to where he can't actually move when he eats people? I can't remember. They've nerfed him so many times. I think that was one they were thinking about doing, but I can't remember if they went through with it all the way. Got to hurry up a little bit. We're almost out of time. As I slowly find Tahm Kench and click on him. Hello? Okay. Was he slow? Is he slowed by a lot? Okay. I don't see anything that said, because I know they were toying around with like allied or enemy champion. He's grounded and slowed by 90. Okay. Yeah, so they did go through with that. I can't even remember. I haven't played him so long, and I just never see him in the bot lane. Okay, so he is still slowed, even when he eats an ally by 95%, and he can't flash. God, they've nerfed this champion so much. So I guess the move speed, like, it'll make him less safe in lane. I think this is mostly a nerf to top lane, Tahm, although they say it's for bot lane. But the shield duration is lower, and you're not going to be able to run people down as easily to get the stun. Did he really need it? I mean, they just want nobody to play this champion. I guess, you know, he's got about a 50% win rate, but... Okay, whatever. Yeah, huge nerf. Speaking of massive nerfs, let's look at Yuumi here. Holy crap. They nerfed her so much in the last couple of patches. Now they're taking off 50 damage. 50 damage off her Q, which you max first. 50. Later ranks. And the slow early on is minus 20. I don't think that matters as much in the laning phase if you have an AD carry that has a skill shot that they're trying to land on them, like a Jinx or a Jhin or something. I guess it's going to matter a little bit more, but the slow is going to matter some. It's 1.5 at all ranks. Okay, whatever. The cooldown actually being a lot higher is a pretty big deal, although once again, you max it first, so, you know, realistically, remember you get one free point in it. Basically... Actually, I guess you get one free point in your W, not in your Q. So yeah, 10.5 at level 5 versus it was 9, so it's still a second and a half. So basically, you can't spam it as much. It does way less damage later on in the game. Slows for less time. I don't think she needed to get hit that hard. I don't know. I mean, I know she's permabanned in Pro right now, so I guess, you know, there's obviously a problem with her. Her win rate is pretty high. I guess. Just sucks because solo queue, she's like 46%, but I guess they need to do it for Pro. She's got too much presence. I guess that's fine. Ziggs, they're finally doing the buff that I said they should. They're taking the cooldown on his W down a lot, down to 20. If you followed me, I've said this for a long time. There really should not be an ability that's more than 20 seconds unless it's absolutely game-breaking. So I think that's good. That'll help him out. Gives him an AP ratio. You don't use this all in most of the time, so that doesn't matter. But that'll help him with his safety a little bit more. Inferno Bomb, later game. I mean, Ziggs is really dangerous to buff because he has so much wave clear. He can be super frustrating to play against, but it's probably fine. And then finally, runes. Nerf to Biscuit. This is a pretty substantial nerf. If you're using it for actual sustain, it's doing 1/3 less sustain. And if you're using it just for combat to get as much health as possible, though, I think it's actually a buff. Because you get your health like all at once in 1/3 the amount of time. So if you're using it in combat to get some more effective health on the spot, I think it's better. But overall, it's a pretty big nerf to sustain. So this might completely change what like 80 carries get instead of Boots Biscuit. They might do something else like Taste of Blood and the movement speed one, Relentless Hunter. I could see 80 carries taking that instead, or just something else in the domination tree. Or maybe they go back to sorcery and take like Absolute Focus plus Gathering Storm. I don't know. But I think this is going to push 80 carries off of Biscuits, and it might push a lot of other champions off as well. I've been dropping the Biscuits in favor of Presence of Mind and Tenacity on most supports, so I think a lot of people are not going to be getting Biscuits as much anymore, which will ultimately stop people from getting stopwatches as well, which is probably good for the game. Stopwatch is super toxic. Anyways, that's going to be it. Hope you enjoyed this. There are a couple other minor changes here, but we're pretty much out of time. So I'll just talk about those maybe in another video. And yeah, have a good day. Don't forget, like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Stay tuned for tier lists coming out over the next couple of days, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.